Good morning and welcome to our Power Breakfast interview this Tuesday. Now, we've all been following the story of how the Education Cabinet Secretary Kilemi appointed Dr. Kilemi Mwiria to go and look at the fees charged in secondary schools and come up with recommendations. Well, the task force did that and presented a report to the president last week. And this morning we want to explore what is in that task force in detail and what Kenyans should expect will come out of that report. So, Dr. Kilemi Mwiria, karibu.
Asante sana.
And congratulations, Bwana, for being appointed education presidential advisor on educational matters.
Yes, thank
Sasa,
you very much.
education yote ni wewe.
No, but I need a lot of advice, so advisors need to be advised.
Okay. And Dr. Sarah Ruto from the regional manager for Wezo East Africa, which also did a serious research recently on education in this country, and we'll be looking at some of those things as well. Let's start with Dr. Kilemi. Now, in a nutshell, after surveying the secondary school fees structures, what did you find to be the most shocking thing, if I may say that? Because you are on a fact-finding mission.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, what we, thank you. First of all, I'm very delighted to have this opportunity to share with Kenyans some of our findings on the task force on school fees. But you know, let me begin by saying the reason we were established, we were formed, was that there was an outcry by the public, you know, on how expensive education was. And therefore, one of the findings relates to the fact that education was found to be so expensive, ranging from, you know, like 20-something thousand in some schools to like up to 120,000 in some national schools. A lot of our kids were dropping out of school. The performance was not that good. But also, you know, for a country where, you know, we are talking basic education, only 23% of Kenyans have had secondary education. And of those that enter secondary education, only 39% of the relevant age group are actually in schools, even though the transition is good. So it was essentially because there are problems of low quality. More than 70% of our kids who go to secondary school get less than a C plus, which is, you know, and you can say C minus is like 50%. It was as a result of very few numbers, and as a result of many of those who go to school not being able to complete. So the main problem we found, therefore, was the very high fees, and there were many reasons for that. You know, levies that are not controlled, inefficiencies in the management of school resources. You can also say, you know, extensive corruption. The problem of not there being enough teachers and parents being forced to employ teachers. Almost 37% of the teachers in our secondary schools are employed by parents. So really, so issues of inefficiencies, issues of not being able to control how much is being charged, issues of school guidelines not being enforced, but especially the fact that principals of schools, in some schools, were able to just decide on what to charge parents.
Right. The 23% of Kenyans, you say, have gone through secondary education. Is that very low relative to other countries, for example, comparatively? And to what would you attribute that? Really? School fees only, or just people not being focused on getting educated?
Yeah, well, you know, I think that's low. You know, 23% is low. Because, you know, for a country that is thinking industrial, middle level income by 2030, we need a huge population of young people with education, especially the very basic education. But the main reasons for that is that, first of all, secondary school education was elitist, very elitist for many years. It's not until 2003 when the post-Moi government introduced free secondary education that we were able to open up primary education. And as a result of those numbers, secondary education had to expand. Whereby, you know, the government also introduced subsidized secondary education, but that only raised the levels to less than 40% of those who actually complete. So the real problem is that it was elitist, it's been expensive, and you can say, you know, there are parts of the country also that had not been reached, you know, to try to whip parents to send their kids to secondary schools.
Yeah.
But it's not, you know, that is what you can say almost also that it was not a priority. It was not compulsory.
Before we get out of that, I'll ask Ruto to just talk about that education he's talking about, you've done some research into the caliber of that education and the quality of that 23% of our graduates from secondary schools. How are they faring? And maybe just also mention what you do.
Yeah, first, let me just qualify that our research has been on the foundational levels.
Yes.
And which shows that we are not doing very well. But if we are not doing very well in the ABCDs, I think it gives you a glimpse on higher up,
yes,
how well the competencies and skills are being inculcated, if any. And I think as a research community, probably we need to be getting more assessments in middle level and secondary, because we have seen an outcry of, especially the world of employers, who say that the graduates they are getting, be it after Form 4 or even after getting any skills in the tertiary colleges, are just not up to it in the market, which shows you that there is something wanting, even of the few who make it, that perhaps a little bit more
you
could
said
be
they
done.
cannot even write one composition.
Yes,
Yeah.
If we're to talk about the whole aspect of language, and I think language is very important because that is the media in which we communicate and do many things. I think the problem in this country is that we have a lot of semi-skilled, so that right from the beginning, before we had people who are even skilled in their mother tongue, who could talk. Now they are not well skilled, lack fluency in mother tongue, lack fluency in English, lack fluency in Kiswahili. So if you lack fluency, if you cannot communicate, then how are you able to do many other things?
Right.
So and it all comes to the whole aspect of building skills and competencies, which is I think something that our education system and our curriculum could do a little bit more. And it's good that there is a curriculum reform process that has begun. Maybe this is one of the things that we will be looking at into the inside. Dr. Kilemi has been looking at whether we are accessing it and how expensive it is.
Yes, then
and
we need to look at the quality once you access
as well
it
we do.
inside what is
That's
going
right.
on. Yes.
So what is going to happen with your report? Now that you have published it and you gave it to the president and he said, I am not endorsing it.
And he says
So
he's standing with you.
He's standing with
What
you.
is
So
standing
what
with?
happens?
No. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
The president was very happy with a lot of our recommendations. The only reason he said we have to wait is that we had not discussed with Treasury where the money would come from. And he was being cautious, and I think this is good, from the days of what you call them, declarations that you make without thinking about where the resources will come from. It was the only reason.
Yes.
And what he did after that is he directed that we start to meet with Treasury. And we had a first meeting on Friday, to kind of, think of where we can get this money from.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, it's very optimistic. There is a very good chance that we'll find the resources that are required to begin to implement in January.
Yeah.
So it is not that he didn't. He just said, in fact, he said, I wish we had brought Treasury here with us this morning.
Yes.
So
what is the big hammer? What is the big hit from it? That education should be free from next year, or what is your ultimate recommendation? Let's hear it from yourself.
okay, the big recommendation is that we like to have free secondary education by next year. And by free, we are talking tuition free, where government takes care of the expenses of teachers, of teaching learning materials, of a lunch program for all all children in our secondary schools, especially day schools, and where you leave it to the parents to take care of boarding, food and clothing, which is expected of a parent. So that would be it. And to achieve that, from the amount of money that the government is giving out now, we need an additional 23.5 billion. So when we were calculating last week, out of that 23 billion, given already we are in the middle of the financial year, we would need about 12 billion to be able to start. And what we are therefore trying to figure out with Treasury is how can we come up with this 12.5 billion to be able to provide education that is free for all secondary schools, and where you leave parents to take care of their the boarding component.
So the day schools will be free.
Yes.
Free. When we introduced free primary school education, what happened? They all jumped down.
Yes.
Schools which used to be doing very well, like Olympic or Nairobi Primary,
Yes.
they became Nancy.
Yes.
Pray.
Yes.
How do we know that this is not going to happen in secondary school?
No, because we are conscious of that fact. We are conscious of the fact that, and Dr. Ruto was talking about this, and Makali, about the fact that it is not just about the numbers; it's about quality education.
Yes.
And if we are going to make it possible for all Kenyan kids to go to secondary school won't be deceiving them if we don't provide them with the quality of the kind of education they can use to make it possible for them to progress to higher levels of education, to make it possible for them to take advantage of post-secondary school training opportunities. Therefore, we are recommending, in partnership with the counties and the constituencies, that all schools will have a computer lab, all schools will have a library, all schools will have enough teachers, and all schools will have all the support they need, all the necessary inputs to be able to provide an education of quality.
Possible. Where are you getting the teachers? As of now, we lack about 80,000 and 90,000 teachers.
Yes.
All schools will get enough teachers. From where?
I like Muteki, the way Muteki is style. First of all, he asked me a question, and when I answer, he doesn't agree. So it's more than opinion, and gives his opinion.
So,
but I want to explain why it's possible. I want to explain why it's possible.
Yes.
Let me tell you why it's possible. First of all, remember, we are dealing with fewer numbers than with primary education. And I don't agree with those who say we need 90,000. You know, that is the politics of teacher unions. So we need 100,000 teachers. That is not true.
Yes.
What we intend to do and what we are recommending is that we improve the utilization of the available teachers. If we do that, and we have requested, in fact we did request because we finalized our report in June, that the Teacher Service Commission does an audit of the number of teachers in secondary schools. Where do we have an oversupply? Where is it that we can add a little bit more? But more than that, the real crisis of teachers in secondary schools came as a result of the many day schools that we have built. And they are all over. And some of those schools are inefficient. You know, you go to a school, the average school size is 277 students.
Yes.
And yet a recommendation for a full, additional school is 540 students.
Right.
So we need to improve on the efficiencies. And we are recommending
Merge
in this
our
contravention, we merge the small schools. There is no need to have a school, across the river, that has 50 students, and another one which is 500 yards away with 100 students. This is not, we are asking for a minimum of 180 students for you to be even given a TSC teachers. So even that school with 50 students as a principal, it has a deputy, it has a head of department, and they are teaching the same subjects as a school that is neighboring. So if we can merge them, you'll be surprised how much will improve the utilization of our teachers. So we can get the numbers from what is in there.
What is the ratio? What ratio would be looking at?
Right now our ratio is
1 to 30
to 32.
Yes.
Which is very luxurious. The recommended international ratio is 1 to 35 plus minus 10. Plus minus 10. So you can go up to 45, you can go up to 25.
Okay.
Depending on the circumstances.
But even if you merge and do what you're proposing to merge schools and optimize on the use of the ones we have, you still need to hire more teachers. I mean, from your report, you say we have 67,000 secondary school teachers, right?
Yes.
How many more do we need?
Well, you see, this is why I started by saying the TSC were part of this task force.
Yes.
And we did recommend strongly. Nobody can tell us the truth about how many teachers we actually need unless we do a proper audit. Especially because with so many schools, we are just posting teachers all over the place. So I cannot tell you how many we need, but I can tell you for sure it is not 67,000. That is for sure. That with the teachers we've got, we'll be surprised. We may not need more than 10,000 teachers. As long as we agree that we have to utilize to the maximum, we have to discuss this with our teachers' unions as well. I mean, because it is about give and take. This program is about all of us, and there will be a lot of consensus building required. All of us have to contribute to it. But I believe that if we merge schools, if we increase the teaching load from the current 22 lessons to 27, and if we ensure that teachers can be used across schools where possible, we will be okay, and we can guarantee quality. Teachers, of course, teachers are critical, but I mean there are other inputs that are important in ensuring quality.
Yes.
That's why we're talking labs. That's why we're talking libraries. That's why we're talking the general environment, and that's why we want a lot of actors involved in supporting the kind of environment that will improve quality.
Yeah. Some people
why are you suggesting that the government feeds, buys lunch for students?
Oh, why? Oh, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because in some of our schools and some of our kids, if we ask children to go, we realize if we ask children to go home for lunch, many of them will not go because there's no lunch. and they'll not come back therefore. It's a serious problem. It's much more serious than we realize. And it's been established worldwide that by providing a lunch to a child in school, many of whom didn't have breakfast in the first place, and they are, it's going to be tough, even what they will get for dinner. By providing lunch, we are giving them the capacity for greater absorption, for better performance, and even keeping them in school. So this is why, and I think we think this is important. There are people in this country who can't afford a lunch.
But I wonder, it's a good thing and I agree with it. But yet, would we start with secondary? Perhaps it needs to be primary or the other lower levels, because I think that is where, when you go to some of our primary schools, even right from preschool, it's really a sad state of affairs. So I agree totally, but this is perhaps, I know it was outside your scope, but perhaps it is something that needs to be expanded to the other
the free
areas.
lunch and the facilitation needs to start in the primary level.
Yes,
I would say so.
And
but there was a proposal for milk.
This is basically.
There was a proposal for milk. Is it still on the table?
No. Well, not on this one, but it was not. But I think what Dr. Ruto has just emphasized is that a lunch program helps.
Yes.
Our mandate was secondary education, and the day schools are more or less like primary schools because kids are going home. So we want to, improve their feeling well in school, and to make sure that they concentrate, they do well, and they don't feel disadvantaged. The moment you tell them to go home, some will have lunch, others won't. So this is a small sacrifice. It would cost 5,600 per pupil.
Per year?
Per year. Per pupil. Per year. You can imagine.
That doesn't look like a lot of money.
It doesn't look like a lot.
Enough?
Yes, it's enough. It's enough.
In fact, one of the reasons some people have doubted the validity of your report is in the recommendations, the fee you recommend, and whether it can cater for all the needs felt in the schools, which I'm sure you have had quite a bit of feedback on.
Yes.
They think you're not being pragmatic.
Yes, and some people say we are being populist, even people who are in the task force.
Yes.
But Kenyans are interesting people. First of all, they say the school fees are too high. When you reduce, they say, now this is not possible. When you find a way of reducing, it's not possible. We did these calculations with head teachers. We went to schools in the sub-counties. We went to county schools. We went to national schools, and we involved principals of schools, members of school committees and school boards. We involved all of them. We had a meeting from across the country, and we looked at what is it that you need as a minimum. And we compared what schools are asking for. And I tell you, we came with this recommendation, having the inputs of the local communities, but mainly the principals of schools.
Yes.
The principals of schools. We had principals of national schools in our task force. We had principals of county schools in our task force. We really did everything we could to ensure that we lower the cost, because this is it. And you'll be surprised. There are many things we can do for less in this country. And we found education is one of those areas where we can do a lot more with less.
Yeah. Did you think about enrollment? Because many schools, when we were talking about 32, many schools, national schools, the students are not the class of 32. They are more.
Yes.
Some of them are 50.
Yes.
60.
Yes.
What are you doing about that?
Yeah. What we are doing about that is that, first of all, you see, that's a problem of national schools. Remember, I said 1 to 32 is luxurious by world standards. Up to 45 is possible. But we have also found, there are schools like Precious Blood, the top school in this country. The class size was 52 students.
Yeah.
It was 52 students. Because the most important input is a teacher. Sometimes it's not the numbers. But of course, that will depend on the kind of environment you are in. I mean, 52 in a poor and day school with few teachers can lead to very terrible performance. So what we are going to do is to see that we have more schools that offer quality education. Our idea is to have a secondary and day secondary school offering the best quality education. We want to see that school competing so that we reduce the numbers from some schools. And the national schools also are becoming more. Now we have 78. By next year we'll have 105. So we'll have, we'll be able to spread this. There are other schools that are called extra county schools, like Precious Blood, Rirota, like Ngandu Girls, that also will expand their capacity to admit more students. So the trick is in improving the infrastructure and the quality of teaching in many other schools, so that we don't only have to look to a few national schools. And if we spread that, it will be possible that we can reduce numbers from some schools and come to an average that is acceptable in terms of the attention that is required from a teacher.
Yes,
I find the recommendation in this task force of actually doing away with these labels, I think, quite refreshing. Because what has it has led to a lot of inequity, in a sense, by saying you have national schools, I don't know, county schools and all that. And I hope that that is what will happen, so that all schools are of quality and that you don't have this pressure. Now we are in KCPE, and if you see what is happening in schools and the prayers, because everybody is trying to go for that one school, I think we are damaging children by not expanding good quality. But there was one aspect in the task force report that I found missing, and perhaps Dr. Kilemi could explain, and this is with regards to our northern Kenya, because would it be right, the report makes a difference about the schools and then special schools for disabled children, which I agree, they need more. But what about schools in northern Kenya? Because the environment there, sometimes the security means that they need a sort of special consideration. Maybe in some areas you can't even talk about day schools, and yet those are the ones that are really expanding access. So what would we do? Do we need to do there so that at least we are fair to the entire country, so to
Yes,
say?
that's a good point you raised. We were aware, of the disparities in this country, and it's not just northern Kenya and and those places, but also even in Nairobi we have slums where students are completely disadvantaged. So you have to address those in a different way, both in terms of what will be the size of the classroom, whether or not, like in northern Kenya, we said, we still have to have boarding schools. We have recommended that. But even the point, of merging of schools, we allow for greater latitude in terms of the coverage, and that you can also have just fewer than 25 students, 20 students. So we are aware of these disparities. They may not come out that strongly, but we're making it very clear that there are areas in this country that require special circumstances because of their special, unique problems. And they are in those disadvantaged remote areas, as well as in informal sectors in urban areas of this country. But the point you made about classification of schools, it's a pain. I mean, there's no justification for it.
But
that's why we are saying schools should just be public.
Yes.
Public day and boarding.
Yes.
And then the special schools. But you want to say?
But you had national. I mean, you've not removed national from the tags. You still have national and county, don't you?
Yes. You see, for purposes of funding, we are saying we will not talk about national. We'll call them boarding schools. They are boarding schools like any other schools, because the cost of food in a national school in Meru is the same cost of food as in a sub-county school. And we are looking at these schools, and where the cost of a teacher is basically the same. And the teaching materials.
If you want to make a difference in a school type, then let it be because of what that school is offering. Maybe it is a school specializing in the arts. Like I always think a school like Dagoretti should have that, because when you look at the musicians it has given, there must be something in the curricula and ethos of that school. And or a technical school, if that must be, let it be because of the content.
But isn't the categorization also determined by the facilities that they have? I mean, there's a difference between a national school, Dr. and the sub-county. In fact, there were 5 categories which you have neutralized and named only day and boarding.
And special.
But there were special schools, sub-county schools, extra-county schools, and national schools.
There was even a move to fund some schools in constituencies, centers of excellence.
Exactly.
So they went and spent millions of shillings. In certain schools, you select a school in a constituency and say that is the center of excellence. And discriminate against the others. Give it much more money. That which was terrible.
You see, that is, it's this is true. But let me explain, Wanamakali. We are calling them public day and public boarding and special for purposes of funding.
Funding only.
Yeah, but in terms of recruitment, we will continue to have schools that have a national character for various reasons, including mainly integration, national integration, because we will still need to have that. But we are saying we are not going to treat them specially.
But
and then
why do you think integration will happen only when you create certain schools and admit people from around the country? Why can't the admission be Why can integration be a theme across all schools in Kenya?
Well, because it's also expensive. It's also expensive for some parents to go across to be all over the country. And, you know, I also agree with you, integration doesn't mean you'll be a nationalist. Some of the biggest tribalists in this country have been to national schools, obviously, you know, and you don't change those people and go to national schools.
Yes.
But, I mean, we should try, you know, we should try and mix this Kenyan. And we are also saying that integration also will be integration of teachers. It's not right to recruit our teachers, you know, locally and also post them locally. We have about 300,000 teachers.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with recruiting locally so that Bungoma will get a share, because we have to, you know, every Kenyan has got a, but we are saying let's recruit them locally, but and deploy them nationally. You know, so that so you know
but pushing that agenda of integration, Daktari, if you had for example the two categories, just for hypothetical sake, you had national schools and county schools.
Yes.
So that then the national schools would admit a certain percentage of, say, 80% from outside that county or that region.
Yes.
And the county schools will be compelled to admit 50% from outside that county.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a good policy?
But that's how it is actually. You see, there will be those national schools that will take a certain percentage, and then there are county schools that have to take at least 25% from outside their respective counties. This is how it is.
Yes.
And then the sub-county schools will take from the whole county, a certain percentage from the whole county. So this is, we are continuing.
But what is the difference between having a school in Kericho or in Uasin Gishu that takes for 25% from outside that county, and that outside is Marakwet County or Nandi County or, or Kericho County? I mean, that doesn't achieve integration because it's still within the same communal area.
Yeah, we are saying, you know, the county schools are encouraged to take at least 25 outside from outside their own counties.
Yes. Outside
their own counties. So you take from other counties, including even in Kericho, they'll take from Meru, they'll take from the coast, they'll take from across the country.
But if a school is day.
No, day schools, no.
No, there's no question of integration.
No, I know. Day schools are not, we would not expect
integration
of that.
centers.
No, but day schools, of course, you understand. I mean, kids, will, you know, and that will be a good population. But this is the best way for us also to get more numbers to school, as long as we can improve the quality of education of that day school. It is, you go to Europe, you go to America, I mean, most students go to day schools. Of course, the circumstances are different because the parents are able to support their kids, you know, you are able to be driven to and from school. But we need to begin to deal with that, because this idea of boarding is also, it's also not the best way to provide education for most children.
And let's look at the school fees. You have recommended 51,000 for boarding schools and 23,000 for day school.
Yes.
That is if that fee that they're paying is to cater for accommodation
and food.
And food.
Yes.
Is that money adequate? Because schools have said, you know, schools of special needs, national schools which are charging 120,000 shillings, say this is peanuts. What was the rationale for arriving at that? Schools with swimming pools, we have had that argument.
Yes.
With you know, extracurricular activities that require more money.
Yes.
Are they going to be, you know, maintained within this fee structure?
Well, you know, what we did is we looked at what is it that you need as a minimum. And remember, you know, there are other facilities that parents can pay for, because we're saying government, the responsibility of government is to provide free tuition and provide teaching, learning materials. You know, the other things are the responsibility of parents and the respective alumni of those institutions. But in terms of food, we found that is adequate.
Yeah.
In terms of you know, electricity, water, and conservancy, all the things that you need,
those are adequate.
It is adequate, and we, like I said, we did this with the representatives of national schools.
Yes.
There's one problem in this country. You see, the government converted. We used to have like 22 national schools. Now we have 78, and there will be 105. Now what's happening? Some of these schools that are being converted from, say, former provincial to national schools, fees jump from 40,000 to 50,000 to 100,000, 120,000, just because you have become a national school. What has changed? You know, is it like the hotel system where, you know, you move from 1 star to 2 star to 3, 4, so that when you become national school, you are now 5 stars, so you charge more?
You have certain facilities.
Yeah.
That's why you're national. You must have a swimming pool. You must have some tennis courts. You must do some things which average schools don't.
So you're saying being national. So
That is what it means.
So what you are saying is being national, you're elitist. You can have a rugby pitch, you can have a swimming pool, you can have tennis courts, but the other fellas should not, So we don't let the other fellas.
Not only that, your clothes are washed.
No.
Laundry.
Facilities.
You have laundry facilities.
Yeah, and we
you
are
don't
saying,
wash your clothes.
and we are saying that's a lot of nonsense. We said,
Yes.
we had a principal who was saying that one of the things that surprised them the most in some of these national schools would be that a parent would come on Monday, open the boot, and remove a bag with clothes that have been laundered professionally and gives to the child. So I was asking that principal, did you follow up that kid after school to find out what kind of human being he ended up being? Because, we can't encourage that.
Yeah.
We are even saying, actually, students should be able to take part in, in some basic tasks in schools. Cleaning, leave alone washing their own clothes. It's also a way of training young people to grow as, not as persons who think there are things that they cannot do. So, laundry, these extra facilities, treating you as an elite, you have to have sausages, others can only afford this.
I'm not saying mine, but there are children who don't wash clothes because there's a washing machine at home. Now you take him to some school and tell him to wash clothes. He has never washed clothes. What do you do with that?
Well, train him
Then
to
he
wash
will
clothes.
learn.
Yeah.
The good part about being a human being is that you're a learning person. You will learn.
Yes.
And there is nothing that you ever do that is in vain.
Yeah.
Even that own washing, because what does it do? It teaches you hygiene. So leave alone the washing machine or anything. So I think I agree with Dr. There's so many opportunities for teaching children skills, and we need to do that. And there's a problem with the middle class in Kenya today, where they think that because they can afford to have house help, that their children are growing up better. You're actually destroying your child.
The question that still accompanies that school fees thing is that, yes, you made recommendations, but then there are those who think this is wishful thinking, because what are you going to do to enforce that? It's okay for you to set the recommended fee,
Yes.
but schools will admit pupils and they'll levy swimming pool fee, what fee, all those things. What are you going to do about that?
PTA and Board of Governors will meet
and
on
agree
on a day,
to set the fee.
AGM, the day we have a
And it's not the first time fee structures have come.
Yeah,
and,
they'll do that.
and they will agree. With this school, we as parents and the board, we have agreed that we will pay this.
And this is what we want.
Some dissenting
Yes.
voices, regardless of this.
I am glad, because you guys asking me a question and also saying, by the way, you also have the answer. You are saying this will not work.
Yeah, thank you
So,
for the report.
yeah,
Good
no,
wishful
but-
thinking,
yeah.
but it won't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me tell you what we are proposing. There were always fees guidelines. The problem was that there was no enforcement. We are saying that from now on, the Jogo House and the county directors of education have to follow up to make sure these recommendations are implemented and serious penalties for defaulters. It can be done. Only that's not been done.
Really?
It's not been done. Secondly, we are not saying a school can't have a swimming pool or you can't have an extra other facility. But that has to be approved. You have to apply to the Minister of Education through your county director for education for it to be approved. If it's approved and the parents want to do it, it's okay, but it must be approved. The problem before is that some schools would start 2-3 projects at the same time, and there would be no end to these projects because they are cash cows. They are way of,
my
raising
problem, Dr. is that you are still not taming the animal of extending it. That animal that extends its territory, even when it said up to here, it pushes.
Yes.
Which is what schools are doing.
Yes.
Now that leaves the student vulnerable. I have my child who has passed and been called to Nairobi School or State House Gas. I am vulnerable because I'm a parent, a new parent. I'm coming and I'm being told the school agreed. So how is the government and how is this report going to protect that person
Yes.
who has not been in the system to offer their views?
It is not the school that agreed. Muteginjao referred to PTAs and parents going there and in unison saying we agree. Because you go to a school, usually there is some planning by some administrators.
Yes.
They will have parents seated at strategic places during the AGM. And they will have a few, there are psychophants all over. It's not just politicians who have psychophants.
Yes.
There are psychophants also among parents. So they'll stand up and the principal say, we need this and that. And some parents, some sycophant will say, yes, it's true.
Yes.
Another one from the other corner, say, we have approved. And then all of a sudden, because most Kenyans never tell the truth, even they only speak after the meeting.
Yes.
It's done. Then they go complaining after the meeting. So we are also telling parents they have a responsibility. It's a lot of, you cannot blame, you cannot blame head teachers. You can't blame government when you are doing all when you are not doing your bid. We are even saying we are also asking for social accounting, where everything we provide, we put on the list, on Neto's board, and you check. I mean, we receive so much money for textbooks. We receive so much money for these facilities.
In a nutshell, Prof, the truth is that the parents are still going to be vulnerable because this government is unable to stop. The problem I'm trying to push here is this: that a student who is admitted to that school, qualified properly, and got admission, is going to be subject to the tyranny of the previous parents and teachers. And parents and the board.
We are saying from
because as you get a letter admitted to Nairobi school, the fee says 120,000. What do? Either you forfeit that chance or you pay the money. Can your task force intervene at that point?
Yes, you see, we are saying from now on, it shouldn't be business as usual. Even government appreciated the fact that they were not enforcing like they should have. And a lot of parents were intimidated. It's basically because there was someone not doing their job. So we are saying it's up to government to protect the innocent and those who don't speak. But we are also saying the parents must protect themselves. After all, we are also saying now this is a very democratic era where we should be able to talk, because some of these things we cannot deal with unless we are part of the solution, unless we don't accept to be misused. So nobody will be subjected to the previous fees levels. No one will be, because the Minister of Education is going to set new regulations on the expectations. And whatever else that is going to be increased, the parents have to agree. So we are saying, you parents who have students all over, in national schools and in county schools, do not accept to be intimidated. And the letter you get, by the way, does not say 120,000. It always says you pay 27,000, whatever is approved by ministry. Then there are many other things that are added. But because you don't want your kid to be thrown out of a school, and maybe you even bribe to get your kid to that school because you really want that place. I mean, how can you afford to make any noise?
What about school procurement systems? I know of a situation where two schools bought buses. Similar buses, same capacity. One was a million shillings over the other one. Which means there is no proper procurement ways of, like you said, food. Chairman of the board of governors or some parent is providing food there at whatever cost. How does your report talk about procurement in schools?
No, we have spoken about procurement. We have proposed very serious oversight. We are proposing
school books are audited.
The school books are not audited, we realize, but there is a provision for auditing an annual audit. That doesn't happen in a lot of schools, partly because there are not enough auditors, but also because many of them are compromised. So we are even recommending the possibility of outsourcing, from a panel in accounting, but a panel that circulates across schools. It's a tough thing. I mean, it's first and foremost, it's about corruption. It's about people wanting to corrupt and finding willing recipients. So sometimes you can talk a lot about putting structures in place, but I mean, if you have willing buyers and willing sellers, it also becomes difficult. That's why we are saying again, it's a question of how we carry out ourselves, the honesty, whether parents or people who are providing in schools, and the extent to which also, we can accept honesty and commitment from our principals and other managers.
But you are now talking about morals.
As one of them.
Morality.
People want to eat where they are working. And no headmaster. Those headmasters you see, or the principals, they are called principals these days. What kind of cars do they drive? What kind of houses do they have? Their own houses. I know of a school which was being built, one of those centers of excellence. They got 30 million shillings to build that center of excellence in my place. When they were building a center of excellence, the headmaster was building his own house. Same contractors.
What about if the headmaster was planning to build the house before even the amount came anyway? Should he have stopped because you're also building the school? I'm trying to say, I'm not defending the principal. I'm not defending the principal. But we can't always say that, I mean, some of these principals also come from well-off families and have relatives with money and, But no, I agree. There's a lot of misappropriation, and we must seal those loopholes.
How? Because if the books are not audited in time.
So the report,
how is that
is recommending more rigorous auditing, is recommending recruitment of more auditors, is recommending outsourcing where necessary, and penalties for those who flout the law.
In fact, that question has come from a viewer, and of course, there are people who are texting in your feedback. If you're a principal and you have a serious recommendation to Dr. Kilemi Mwiria, you can send it in. The number is 22422 right there on your screen. Somebody, in fact, says, would like to ask Kilemi what recommendation they made to avoid wastage by principals and how schools audit is strengthened, because that's the fleecing that Mutegi is talking about.
Yes.
Are there any specific ones in the report?
Yes, we have made reports in addition to recruiting more, in addition to outsourcing where necessary, in addition to getting parents and pupils and everybody else to be part of the social auditing. Yes. We are also recommending training, although training doesn't solve a lot of these problems. People don't steal because they have not been trained. But we are making a lot of recommendations related to that. It's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is misappropriation.
Yeah.
Yes, and until you deal with that, therefore you can't improve efficiency of the use of resources.
Okay, some head teachers are fleecing parents by trading in things like school uniforms, utensils, and the like. An example is a school, somebody says in here, girls in school, it's here. What can you and TSC do about it?
Well, as you know, one does
procurement of uniforms and those utensils.
One does the code of conduct, tell us whether you are a principal of school or you are working in a government ministry, is that there should be no conflict of interest. Yeah, there should be, it should never be allowed. That we know it happens, but it is wrong. So we are saying again, that's an area we have to look at. And maybe, like you said, these are some of the parents who accept anything, that they said in terms of increasing fees.
Yes.
So we have to seal that loophole. This is the only recommendation we can make, and we ensure that if you are in the board of governors of a school, your business is not there to try to do business, but to really serve, the students and the parents.
There are many boarding schools in Rift Valley. Their fee is less than 35,000 shillings per year. Does it mean now we have to increase to 50,000?
No. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Schools which are charging less.
Yes. There are schools that are charging less than 50, 51. And this is why now, going back to you, Bwana Makali, it's not unrealistic what we are recommending.
That is actually happening.
Yeah, it's happening. Even some, national schools charge, there's national schools that are charging 40 something already. What we are saying, that is the maximum. And the reason we are getting to 51 is because we are taking account of some of the things you are saying for some of the schools. We already have facilities that they cannot do away with.
Yes.
But it is possible. They will not increase. We are saying that's the maximum. It could be less. We would prefer less.
Yes. Should schools engage in activities of fundraising activities? Like, for example, if a school has a swimming pool, or some good fields, should they be renting those out commercially so they can make more money? Is that something you explore? One
of the recommendations we have made is that schools can income generate. You go to a school like Nairobi School, or Lenana, or Alliance Boys. How much land do they have? Are they not sitting on a gold mine? Supposing they did apartments on, just 5-10 acres.
Apartments?
Yeah, income generating. You can make millions of shillings. So this is one example.
Headmaster's very creative.
Yeah, I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
But you can also do farming, and you are also training students. There's a lot of demand for food in this setting. So we are recommending that if you have facilities that you can use, please use them for income generation. But also use your own people, including your own students, to support income generation projects. So yes, we are saying this is schools can reduce on the cost by being able to use their own facilities to generate more income than they're actually receiving.
Yes.
And this applies to our public institutions.
Right.
Universities can do that, middle level colleges should do that.
Okay.
The more private sector mentality we have, the better it will be.
Mrefu from Wiki has a very interesting question here. Please visit all the secondary schools in central Kenya. The school fees is very high. The pupils who benefit are from other counties. These guys have built very good schools. You're telling them now people should come from out. You remember there was a problem that in Nyeri who said, no, our children must go to our good schools. Why do we allow external students here?
Well, I think we need to be less selfish as Kenyans. And some of the many schools that are in Central Province are also national schools.
Yes.
A lot of the national schools are in Central Province.
Yes.
And we cannot prevent other kids coming to those schools because we have become counties.
Yes.
And in the spirit of allowing children to go across, the country, And in the spirit of a Kenyan child having quality education, even in counties where Kenyans are better off, it is in the collective interest of this country. So I think we should be, we shouldn't be so narrow-minded in terms of this, especially even those secondary schools in Central Province. Anyway, it is not about buildings.
Yes.
The support they will get from government for teachers, for teaching learning materials, is the same as the support that will go to Kapenguria or to some school in Mombasa. And all that is paid for by government.
Yes.
If that's what free secondary education is. It's not about the community. It's about government providing that money. So really, it is not your school.
But also it is about the country. What resources belong to other counties that benefit the nation as a whole?
Yes, yes.
So I
Good.
think that is how we need to look at also
So
our
we have
learning
good schools,
institutions.
others have some other nice things which are benefiting
You also
the
have
country.
a port in Mombasa that
Yes.
benefits the entire country.
Yes,
We
yes.
now have oil that will come from I don't know where, that
Yes.
hopefully will benefit the whole country.
Yeah.
We'd like to see that oil, a levy, going
Yes.
to school
Yes, yes.
to benefit.
Yes.
So let us have a
Selfishness
bigger
is not-
and broader mindset.
Yeah. But this thing about schools, I told you, my girl is in my girl's school, and they say parents approved fee increase, but I have never been in such a forum. Can you stop parents from being bought by principals and boards?
Well, we spoke about that, didn't
You
we?
know that irony I told you,
Yeah.
where parents are subject to
Yeah, but maybe
more-
we should-
But also
yeah.
what about, I think sometimes it is, there's too much of blame game.
Yes.
And I know there are certain people who are vulnerable, certain parents perhaps because of lack of education or illiteracy might never talk, but there is also a group who
Yes.
can do a little bit more,
Yes,
who
that's
can claim their rights a little bit more. I think this business of always waiting for government has a role to play, and we have seen, like for example, when it came to them putting a foot on holiday tuition, what happened? It did work. But also we have a responsibility. Maybe even this parent has never gone to school meetings, or they keep quiet, talk after the meeting. I think let us exercise more agency
Yes.
as citizens of this country.
Yeah.
And if you have not been part of any resolution like that parent, nothing is to prevent you from complaining officially
Yes.
that you have not been part of it. But the most important, because there are other parents' meetings, you should go and complain. But we lack that courage.
Yeah.
We lack
I
that
think
courage.
there's also tyranny in those schools.
It is
There are
true.
those who who hold sway. They have agreed.
Not
And
only
the rest
that, you
are
as a parent,
imposing
you
the
go and
rest.
make those complaints, your child is victimized.
Yeah, in fact, that is the truth. Yeah. Or
So,
if you don't
but
pay.
what
I've been in a
happens-
school
what-
where
what-
I did not like the fee increases.
Yes.
But I was in the minority.
Yes.
So you are you are the one who doesn't want the school to progress.
Yes.
You either take your child out of there.
I think the bigger problem is for the people who are initiating this process. But once you populate that many more are talking out, are coming out, I think we will begin to see a difference. And it's the same thing, a discussion that where you dismiss the whole aspect of morality. I know it is true that the value system in this country is very low, but all these training auditors will come to naught if we do not put in principles of integrity,
Yes.
of morality, of values in us. I know it is difficult, but we should never lose sight of that. And maybe it needs to be very strong in the task force as
Really,
well.
yeah,
Because
integrity.
when you have a person of integrity, then all these things are just, to improve the
Yeah,
the
and
system.
it will not be enough if the principal is the only person of integrity.
Yes.
If
you
the
have to-
parents have no integrity.
themselves, yes.
If half the parents don't stand up. You know
Yeah.
what you could have done, Makali?
Yeah.
Instead of being the only one.
Yes.
Because these other guys make their own plans.
Yes.
You should also have gotten your own parents.
And lobbied.
And
Yes.
lobbied. You should have lobbied. We need people like you to do more, because if you are alone, it doesn't make you look very good.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
But we also, one of the recommendations we are making
Yeah.
is that, like I said, we need consensus building. So we have to go out and talk. And we'll talk to members of parliament, we'll talk to governors, we'll talk to senators. But we will also talk to and teachers, of course, and then teachers. But we'll also talk to parents about their responsibilities,
Yes.
and insist that, please, you also do your bit. I mean, you can't always rely from government to ensure that even what that you're entitled to is implemented.
In your recommendations, you say that privates and public schools admissions should be shared out equally.
Yes.
In admissions to high school.
Yes.
What is the foundation of that recommendation? Seeing as people think that the private school students will always outperform the public ones, Therefore, they'll knock out the public and the poor students.
Yes.
And also in terms of numbers, I think we have, 22,000
Yes.
public schools against maybe
5,600. In fact,
yes.
7,500 or 300 according
So
to
can the
findings.
cake be shared equally?
How can
then?
you do that?
Yeah. So what we are proposing is, and we are not victimizing any child, we are proposing that this admission be proportionate.
Yeah.
The academies comprise 10% of the population of KCPE. The public schools comprise 90%. Is it wrong to say, get your share of 10% and let the others get their 90%? Is that...
That's fair.
That is the most
It's
equitable way.
proportionate,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the most equitable way you can do it.
That's fair.
And you are not discriminating against any kid. The problem is the private sector is opposing this because they're using Form 1 admission not for education but as a marketing tool. Basically, it's just a market strategy. You know, it's not about this, and you know the many other things that happen there. And they may outperform these kids at KCPE, but they don't outperform them when they get secondary school.
Yes,
when
at
they
Form
do
4,
that.
yeah.
So we have a responsibility to poor kids of this country. We cannot have the best schools reserved for only those who can pay, who can pay the money.
Yeah.
We have to uplift that 60% that is 50% that's below the poverty line. No country has developed if you leave your best brains out of an education system because they can't afford. I think that's not acceptable. And actually we are saying they shouldn't go all the way to the university so that when you are in a day school,
Yes.
we will not have confidence in these day schools where government was spending 23,000. If children from those schools don't realize they can also come out of that day school and do medicine and engineering, for example, or law or BCom.
Yeah.
So we are saying there should be also a quota because the facilities are completely different. And again, we take proportionately how many of our kids are in day schools. And if we are admitting 1,000 in engineering, again, we take the quotas. Because eventually that will give confidence. The parents will want to invest in those schools and will be creating a more equitable society.
That quotas might include admission marks or just numbers. Because it's presumed that if you're coming from a day school, your facilities and your capacities were not as good as those of a border
Yes.
or a private school.
Yes.
So does that then mean lowering the grade for admission?
It means lowering the grade. Like if
Is that acceptable towards achieving, again, professional excellence?
Yes.
See, again,
Affirmative action,
Yeah.
there are many reasons for doing affirmative action. And I think if it is going to allow more equity, I would go for it. It's the same reason as at a point there was affirmative action to get more girls into the school system. I do not think that because of that we have ruined the economy at all. I think we have raised it. And at the moment, I think it is an erroneous belief to just say day schools is only for those who have lower marks. Quite a number of them, it is because they are not able to go wherever
yeah.
they needed to go.
To some
And it's
extent,
those-
yes,
and,
that's
and,
true.
and,
That's
and
very
those
true.
brains,
But yeah.
there needs to be a way in which you are sure.
You can funnel through into the
Yes,
system.
into- because
there
those
is
are the
also
people hopefully
justice
who will make
occasioned
it.
along the radar. Look, a guy works very hard, gets admission to Lenana School, works very hard, gets the grade to go and study engineering, medicine, or law. Another one works hard, goes to Rongai Day School, makes these marks. The guy gets a B at Rongai, the other guy at Lenana School gets an A-. The guy at A- loses his chance to go to law school, so the guy at B at Rongai goes to law school. Where is the justice?
Yeah, because, you know, I used to know you as a very progressive man. And I guess people change with age. People change with age, especially if they have their children in national schools. But let me
Yes.
let me say this, you know.
Then, well,
let's not mistake merit and justice
Yes.
for privilege.
Yes.
Or hard work, you know, and merit for privilege.
Yes.
The kid who goes to a primary school where they get a straight A of 100 marks
Yes.
does not work much any harder than the one who was in a poor public school and who ended up in a day school. It is just the circumstances are different. It is just that the facilities are different. Facilities at school and facilities at home. And what we have found, and research has established this,
Yes.
even now when you follow our national school kids who come from different kinds of schools, you know, we have found that if you give that kid who was a B or a B plus a chance to compete with one who had an A from Alliance or A minus,
Yeah.
that kid from a day school usually will outsmart and will do better.
Yeah.
But secondly, we are not, we cannot afford to penalize. We can't afford as a country to say, to do engineering or medicine or law, you have to come from elite families. I mean, this is absurd. This is very unfair.
Yeah.
We must give
but
others a chance to
system
also
founded
get
on competition.
It's founded on competition, but this competition is not fair. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
The competition is not fair.
So create opportunities at each level.
You are comparing, you know, different types of fruits.
Yes.
You know, when you so we must find a way of equalizing, and to a point where we'll raise the levels of these schools.
Yes.
And only do that. So affirmative action, it's completely justified. We can't have 80% of our kids not having a chance to do the degree programs that can benefit them when it comes to employment. I think we have to do something about this.
Where does bursary fall in? The school bursary, they're given by counties, they're given by CDF, they're given by government. Where does the bursary come in this?
We are saying there is a lot of duplication, and our recommendation is that we try to harmonize all those resources. The president has a bursary scheme, you know, Equity Bank has a bursary scheme, Cooperative Bank, the Ministry of Education, CDF, and county. We're saying let's put all that in a pot. And we'll find that maybe in Baringo County, we have 200 million available for bursary from all these sources. Let us rank our students in terms of need from number 1 to 1,000 or whatever, and ensure that then that we allocate those bursary resources. This way, there'll be non-duplication, and we will reach out to many more students.
Yeah.
So we have emphasized that.
I think it's a good thing, but it needs to be improved, because even up to now, you can just even pick the newspaper, and the newspaper is not even a research piece. But even like the other day, you had a child showing their admission to Nairobi School. You have many children who are still not accessing, and yet these facilities are there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it means that we need to improve more in terms of identification. It's not enough to just have a fund. You also have to put systems of ensuring that you reach the most vulnerable, who, because of lack of information or lack of courage, do not still access what has been put there.
It's this point Dr. Ruto has made, we have emphasized, and I'm glad you brought it up. We are saying we must have a criteria that discriminates between those who deserve this and those who don't. And we avoid the political criteria, because sometimes we give children of those that supported us in Siasa, and those who have connections with Jogo House and or with the bank can get the money. So we have to have a criteria that is foolproof, which is what the universities are also, you know, gearing towards. In fact, we learned from the Higher Education Loans Board in terms of how we can improve our criteria in terms of discriminating between those who deserve support and those who don't.
Yeah.
But harmonizing and putting a list and making it public is also one way. When I was a member of parliament, I would have put up a list.
Yes.
And, you know, parents would say, well, you know, why did this one so and so get money? And if it was not justified, we'll move that money we'll remove it and pay it to a needy kid, because you can also make mistakes.
Yeah.
So we have to, the criteria is extremely important. Otherwise, this money will also not be put to the best use.
Okay. Quite a bit of feedback, and you know, I'm telling you, you're running you know, a clinic here. In our school, parents are paying 2,000 shillings every term as motivation. Is this not a bribe? Who is supposed to motivate teachers, if not the government?
You want to?
Yes.
And what is
I think those are the unnecessary
Yes,
monies
Yes.
that we could get rid of,
Yes.
so that we lessen the cost on the parents.
Yes.
Because I think what the task force, by the way, was a very good research piece. And I'm not saying this because he was my teacher,
Yes.
but because it just was. And what it showed is that parents are really paying a lot, especially in terms of supporting teachers, and also in all these little monies that come. And those are the things that, as you raised before, we need to assure that you don't have them.
Yeah.
You know, let's get rid of some of
do
those.
we
has to
motivate other civil servants?
But
Yes.
you know,
What is better
it has
motivation
become-
than being paid a salary?
It
And
has-
when you ask for an increment, you get
Yeah.
an
It
increment.
has become a habit these
Yes,
days.
but the trouble-
It has become a habit. When schools perform well,
You go to Dubai.
they are taken to Dubai, they are taken to South Africa, they are taken to Mombasa.
At
Dar es
whose
Salaam.
cost?
Why? At the parents' cost. Why can that be banned?
Even
and say,
bonus
okay,
money.
And partly because the parents themselves are quickly to say, we must send you, you know, to this. You know, that's why we are saying we have to also deal with our parents. But we are also saying we should de-emphasize this business of having one big day to announce results and naming the best kids. You know, everybody's jumping around them and, you know, being carried by others. When there are more than 1,000 other kids, nobody touches. I mean, it's not fair. You know, so this is part of the problem. We are trying to de-emphasize this. We are looking at merit selection and these kinds of factors that make all this necessary. Because when you motivate some, the majority of the kids are not, you know, the teachers are not motivated. What do you expect?
Yeah.
So we must find a way of equating all our teachers in the way we treat them. Because the majority of them cannot make a trip to Dubai.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's really a regular complaint from even among other. Somebody says they ask money from parents for teacher trips, and if student does not pay, the student is
It's
sent away
victimized.
home. Now, the problem here...
We have put
Kilemi,
some money also in our report.
Yeah.
Part of that 23,000 includes some money for trips for teachers and students.
So it's all inclusive.
It's inclusive.
Hey,
And
that's
insurance and many other things.
everything.
Yes.
A uniform, blazer, full sweater, half sweater, tracksuit. Define uniform. Somebody's asking.
We have said it should be simple, the same as a meal. You know, a school meal. Sometimes we exaggerate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it is good for kids to, you know, I mean, to have, there are schools where they say their children must have sausages or they must have this and that.
Yeah.
If the parent can afford it, you know, not a problem. But I think must not make it a requirement.
Yeah.
We are also saying there is an over-uniforming. You know, if you want to say too many items you don't need. We're also saying that should be simple. It should be simple because that's the essence of education. It's not about how smart you look, how much of a show-off you can be. But if we can reduce on this,
yes,
again, we'll be getting somewhere. We have recommended a lot of cost-cutting measures, as well as efficiency measures, to try to arrive at this. We have also recommended, an audit, because you see, we have found there could be a lot of ghost students. And one of the things the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury said, before we even decide how much money we are releasing, and as we are looking for it, let us first of all know how many genuine students are in school, because capitation is based on number of students.
Yes.
And what has been happening, numbers are exaggerated.
Yes, exaggerate. Get more money.
There are reports of to that effect.
Yes, so you'll be surprised. I mean, that's another efficiency, measure. So there are many. It's to arrive at this figure. It's not just about reducing cost. It's not about just saying parents will pay less, but also it's in terms of improving on the use of what is available.
Let me ask you this: why can't we do away with uniform? So that, like America, there are no school uniforms in some schools,
in Europe,
many schools.
Yeah, schools.
Or get a national uniform, like Rwanda.
You want to touch on that?
In Rwanda, or some schools, the school uniform is school uniform.
Equality, uniformity.
It is one
for
uniform
schools
throughout every school.
Yes.
If you see that uniform, that's a high school girl,
Yes.
or that's a high school boy.
Some schools once tried having children come with their own clothes, but because of the varied backgrounds we have, I think the schools found that, in the developed countries, I think there's a basic minimum where you find children can go to a particular shop, and all of you are, in a sense, in a particular uniform, only it's a uniform of jeans from Walmart or whatever. But we don't have that here.
Social classes.
Yeah, so the difference was really exacerbated, and schools felt that they were not managing, and that is why you'll find that schools have come back to this idea of the uniform. Do you want to go for a national uniform? My own preference, I don't think so, because I'm really against this one-fit-all situation. I think let schools choose colors that they like, as long as they are they meet like a minimum and do not go on the overboard of all these particular kinds of blazers.
Because the principals, we had this argument, and I tell you, I strongly pushed for one uniform, one national uniform. But I was overpowered. I mean, and this was about consensus. It was about negotiating.
Yes,
it was
yes.
not
So
about
you lost.
I lost. I lost because I've seen this happen in Thailand, in many countries, and I like it. But the principal said, we didn't distinguish our students from others, even for discipline purposes. You go to, sometimes you can tell who is your student because they're wearing a different uniform. And then this thing about equity. You see, when you have, if you allow kids to go to school with whatever they like to wear, it will be it's the rich, the ones who can afford anything will wear. You'll be surprised. And what will be the psychological impact on those that cannot afford? So I mean, these are, I think, important considerations.
I think we have to come to the end of this interesting conversation. The feedback.
But before you go, can you tell us what your job entails as an advisor?
Well, what does my job entail as advisor? It's firstly, it's these kinds of things like we've been talking about.
Yes.
What can we do about reducing costs?
Yes.
What can we do about anything educational, including what's happening in our universities, what's happening in our secondary schools? It means the president can come to me, and in collaboration with the Cabinet Secretary for Education, because we must work together. We must work together in terms of advice that I can give that is technical, and that sometimes that's not politicized, because sometimes we also we are pushed. You can afford to be honest if you're an advisor, if you're not a politician. But it's basically about giving my input. Unless you are challenging, unless you want to say that I should never have gotten this job.
No,
I'm just kidding. We shouldn't have this advice.
There is a cabinet secretary, there is a principal secretary, there is a directors and whatever.
So is this yet more duplication?
Duplication.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think it is possible for an advisor to the president to give a different opinion from, say, a cabinet secretary? And is that desirable?
No.
Yeah, you know,
those are issues.
Those are issues
about,
to be asked about, and I don't think Kenya is unique in this respect. It is not. It's not respect. It's not unique. But yeah. So you're asking something?
No. Maybe I shouldn't, because we'll open up a new
it's okay.
discussion. But as a concluding remark, in where you sit now, since you are going to be overall in charge of the education in this country, as an advisor on all educational matters,
Yes.
there is a general feeling that the education is in chaos. Quality at the university level, courses all over the place,
Yes.
universities that have no credibility, teachers lacking in those institutions, exams and cheating. I mean, really, would you be advising the president to call another national stakeholders meeting?
Like the one of 2 years.
Yes. I think we have to. I think it's you can recommend anything. You can recommend whatever you want, but unless Kenyans themselves are willing to embrace reform, that would be a problem. You can recommend on improving quality in our universities, but if if the administrators of a university are much more about making money, and they will never fail their customers, whatever quality they are, because you kind of this is and the students themselves are willing to do that. In other words, we all need to talk, and we need to accept that we need a certain minimum quality of education. We need to have certain percentage of our children benefiting from education and benefiting in a meaningful way, and that our teachers must do their best. A lot of the teachers who taught us were missionaries. And they came and just dedicated themselves. We are not saying, the teachers should be the only missionaries, but we are saying all of us should give in. So you are quite right. I think consensus building is important. That one way of achieving it is by talking more and more, because a lot of these things are about other actors outside of the managers of education system than they are of just managers than the CS. And the CS for education is obviously doing its best under the circumstances. I'm not overall. I mean, I'm not real overall. I'm somewhere in there. I think the overall is still the CS for education. But I'll do my best as to complement what is happening.
Yes.
Let's put it this way.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Kilemi Mwiria. I mean, of course, you've come a long way from the university's academics.
Yes.
Union. Now you're going to be facing those unions.
Yes, and we face the unions. And when I first got into education as assistant minister, I supported the unions, and we registered the unions.
Yes.
Because we believe, everybody must be involving, in decision making, in participating, in making our education system, better.
Okay. And Dr. Sarah Ruto from Wezo, East Africa, thank you for coming and for your valuable opinions. That was a Power Breakfast interview. Keep watching Power Breakfast.